Welcome to Virginia Sports Report. On tonight's episode, we will be joined by Longwood Head Coach Griff Aldrich. The University of Michigan has canceled their 2020 and 2021 football series with Virginia Tech. We're going to talk about whether or not that is a big deal for the Hokies and what that means for the future of that football program. And ESPN has their way too early college basketball top 25, which features two teams in the state of Virginia. We're going to give you our way too early top 5 teams throughout the state of Virginia. All of that and more starts right now. This is Virginia Sports Report.
Running out of time, finally throws, and it is gone! Touchdown, Tyrell Roberts!
From 46 yards, Rackey to win it. On the way, Ethan Rackey, and he got it! James Madison survives!
Snap good, spot good.
It's blocked! Liberty wins it! Liberty blocked it! Oh my goodness! The Flames have done it!
360 in the contract, never that. I just take the contact, I bring it back. I'm running on the fast break, behind the back. Yeah, this that.
This is Virginia Sports Report. We are now live and brought to you out of Roanoke, Virginia. I am joined by my co-host Chris Mason. Chris, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great. Masters weekend. Get ready for a big golf tournament this weekend.
This is like one of the best times in sports right now. Like, this is one of my favorite times because we've got the Masters this weekend. Tiger is back, by the way, which is why my butt will be on the couch all day Saturday and all day Sunday. We've got the NFL draft coming up. We just had March Madness, and baseball just started. So, and by the way, the NBA playoffs are right around the corner. So there's a lot of things going on. It's very, very exciting. We are, though, glued to the state of Virginia and collegiate athletics here in the state. For those of you who are just now joining us for the first time, we are Virginia Sports Report. So we discuss all of the Division I college teams inside of the state. So Longwood, Liberty, Virginia Tech, UVA, George Mason, all of those teams. We also have a website, virginiasportsreport.com. Please go there, and you have the opportunity to write your own article. Click submit an article, write whatever you like. I will edit it, publish it out there for all the world to see. It is good to have you with us coming off of a fantastic Easter weekend, and we have joining us at 7:15 Griff Aldrich, the head coach of Longwood men's basketball. Chris, I've been thinking about this. This is our 4th show, and out of our 4 shows, we had Justin Cates from Inside the ACC, Tim Scarborough, a color analyst for college basketball, a color commentator for college basketball, and we've now had, this will be our 2nd head coach that we have had join the podcast. We're only 4 weeks into this, so here's what I'm saying. We are what will legitimize any head coach in the state of Virginia. So Buzz Williams, Tony Bennett, this is a message to you. If you want to be taken seriously, you'll come on our podcast. We're very excited to have Griff join us in just a little bit. First story I want to get to, by the way, is very interesting. So I saw this break last week. Virginia Tech, and I pay a lot of attention to this. I'm kind of a nerd in this regard. I like to look at schedules, and I like to look at who teams are going to play in the future. So Michigan and Virginia Tech had this football series scheduled in 2020 and 2021. And a story broke this past week that Michigan has now canceled their series with Virginia Tech. And they did so paying just a fee of $375,000. Now, that may sound like a lot to some of you. To put it in perspective of how much that is to a college athletics budget, Liberty is playing Old Dominion close to $1 million for a home-and-home series this year. Those are not the 2 premier programs in the state. So this is Virginia Tech and Michigan. So we're talking about $375,000 for 2 games. It is pennies. Now, the reason that is important is because you have to wonder, is Virginia Tech getting into this tough spot where they're so tough to play, especially early in the year. I mean, like, early in the year, they've beaten teams like Ohio State. They've beaten teams like Nebraska. They've beaten some good teams. They can beat anybody early in the year, especially in Lane Stadium. The problem, though, is Virginia Tech does not have the same notoriety of as a Florida State, a Miami, a USC, or Alabama. So Virginia Tech is going to be somewhere around 10-2, 9-3 about every year when they have a good coach. So they're basically a borderline top 15 team. They might get into the top 10 one year every now and then, but not enough for it to be consistent. So if you're a coach like Jim Harbaugh and you're Michigan and you're looking at, your schedule and you see, okay, we've got to play Big Ten in conference play. We've got Ohio State in conference play. We're going to have to play Michigan State, who's tough. We're going to have, we may have to play Wisconsin every now and again. It looks tough. And then you're trying to add on throwing a game going into Lane Stadium, and it just doesn't add up. That's not good for your program, especially if Virginia Tech doesn't finish better than 9-3. Then you're in a real pickle because you're adding a game that's going to be super tough, and you may not reap the reward you need to put yourself into that top 4. So when Michigan comes out and cancels this game for $375,000, I believe this could send a message to teams like Penn State and others that say, hey, we're not willing to play Virginia Tech, and these other schools may not be willing to either. So, for the foreseeable future, Virginia Tech's going to be okay. For example, in 2020, they still play Penn State. They've got a series with West Virginia lined up. They've got Wisconsin in 2024, 2025. So they've got some real teams. But, Chris, my question is, does Michigan canceling this series, does it mean anything for Virginia Tech going into the future? And I know they can schedule some of these regional rivals like a West Virginia or something, but is this a potential problem that this is how they're now viewed by some of the bigger programs in the country?
I actually look at it as kind of a benefit to Tech. So I agree with the sentiment that most years Virginia Tech, with 2, 3, sometimes 4 losses, if you beat them, it's kind of like an oversight. Like, yeah, they beat Tech. But if you lose to Tech, it's kind of like, big red flag for teams that are trying to compete for the national championship.
Right.
But where I think it benefits Tech is, and where I disagree with you, is they can't win the big game. They have a notoriety for going against these big teams like Alabama, Tennessee, several years ago, Boise State, when Boise State was very competitive, and just losing those big games right the first of the season. And then, they win 8, 9 games straight throughout the ACC and maybe lose another big game against Clemson or a good ACC team throughout the year, which gets them to that 2 or 3 loss record. But I think if they schedule more cupcakes, and they go into playoff season or ACC championship game with not 2 or 3 losses, but only 1 loss when Clemson comes to town or when they have to go to Florida State and against these schools, you're going to argue with me about their schedule, but when they have that good of a record, it's hard to keep them out of, maybe they don't get into the 14 playoff, but they're getting these secondary bowls. And that's, if I was scheduling Tech's schedule, that's what I would do.
I disagree with that. Okay, first of all, Tech beat Ohio State a few years ago. Tech has beaten Nebraska. Tech has beaten some really good teams, and they're especially tough if you have to go play them in Lane Stadium. I mean, and especially if they put that game on a Thursday night or a Monday night game, that becomes tough. And like last year, they beat West Virginia. And even though Tech, to your point, more often than not, you're going to see the game like they had against Tennessee at Bristol Motor Speedway. That's how they're going to show up. Even though that is what's happening most often, you're still taking a risk scheduling a home and home with them. And Tech, by the way, and I wouldn't do this, I would do just what like Tech is going to do. Tech, by the way, is not going to let you schedule a game at your place if you don't return the favor. So I think the perception among some of these bigger programs is, we don't want to go have to play in Lane Stadium, is we could drop that game and they could potentially be a 9-3, 8-4 team. We're okay dropping that game if they go 11-1, but they're not going to beat Clemson, Miami, Florida State all in the same year. So that's where I think the difficulty is for Virginia Tech. Now, here's the question, though. If you're Tech, you lose this game. I think, by the way, before we even get into this, I believe the 2021 game will be at East Carolina. That will be the replacement game. That is like the only year between now and 2026. That's the only year they don't play each other. So I feel pretty confident that's the game they're going to add in. If it were me, though, I would try and schedule a constant series, like an 8-game series with Tennessee. And I wouldn't do the neutral site thing again. I would do home and homes because I think it's great when they play each other in Knoxville and in Blacksburg. But that, to me, is one of the best regional rivalries around. And I don't think we realized it until they played a couple of years ago. But what would you do if you're, Whit Babcock today and Michigan cancels that game? Who do you replace it with?
I like the idea of ECU.
And ECU, by the way, they've played them tough multiple times, even when East Carolina hasn't been good. Especially in Greenville. That's been a tough game for Tech.
I'll tell you what I wouldn't do if I was Tech is schedule James Madison. I mean, they came down a couple of years ago and really handed it to him. But, no, I like your idea of kind of keeping it local. I wouldn't schedule, if I'm Tech, and this kind of goes against our debate here, or with our debate here, I'm not trying to schedule the top 10 teams in the country. Like, I don't want to see Alabama in Atlanta again.
Yeah.
I don't want to drive down and now it's great for the fans, don't get me wrong. The fans, gosh, I would love as just a football fan to see Tennessee come here and play Tech, or even West Virginia to drive down and play Tech. Trying to think of other schools that are local but not in the conference. Maryland, even. Maryland's not that good of a program, but they're close enough to kind of make it, a competitive, fun game. And they're getting better on the football front.
Yeah.
So those types of schools I think is good from a fan base. But if I'm Tech, I'm trying to keep it very low key. Try to play ECU. Try to play other schools that we have a 90 to 95% chance of beating.
Sure. Let's segue to this. So ESPN put out their college basketball preseason top 25, and it's very interesting. We've got 2 teams from the state of Virginia. So we got to fly through this, by the way. We've got Griff coming on here in about 4 minutes. UVA comes in at number 7 on ESPN's list, and at number 16, by the way, just outside of the top 15 market, number 16, the Virginia Tech Hokies come in that ESPN preseason top 25. Chris, I see what ESPN's doing. Tech's returning a lot of players. I feel like that's probably a little high for them. To me, they're probably closer to 20th to 25th.
Yeah, I would see them probably on even the lower end of that, maybe just outside of the top 25. Right. And the biggest issue is, you've got a home and away with UVA, who's good every year nowadays.
Yeah.
You have teams like Duke, North Carolina, NC State that you have to play against in the ACC, and to be that competitive and be ranked as high as 16th, I don't see that. I don't know what their out of conference schedule is next year, but that would just be tough. Now, to give them Tech credit, they have a lot of returning starters, a lot of players on this roster return. I think
and
only one is a
roster
senior.
too, yeah.
Yeah, so they can come in and play 9, 10 players in just about any game. So when it gets to the kind of mid-season, that can go a long way. So I could see it happening. I don't think it's likely.
Yeah, I mean, this is saying we think Virginia Tech could be a 4 seed coming tournament time. I mean, that's pretty high. I don't know that they can get there. So here's our top 5. At number 1, Chris, I think you and I agree here. UVA has to be the top team in the state. They're just so well coached. They don't have to have the top talent in the league to be the best. Second, I think we got to go Virginia Tech. Again, this one's obvious. Great year this year being an 8 seed. They returned so many players. I think they're going to be close to a 5 or a 6. I think they're easily the second best team in the state. Now, when we get to third, that's when things get a little murky. You and I agreed on VCU, right? I mean, VCU, not a great year, but they're returning a lot of players. They've got their coach, Mike Rhodes, coming into his second year with the program. I think VCU could get things turned around.
Yeah, definitely. It was kind of a rebuilding year, kind of starting from scratch. So I'll look for them to turn things around and do very well this coming year.
Yep. Number 4, we've got Radford. I mean, what do you think of that? I think Radford's a solid number 4. Returned most of their players from this year's tournament team.
Most of the minutes, yeah. They have 2 seniors that are graduating. One started, one came off the bench. But Ed Polite Jr. and Jones are both returning, which are their two key players.
Yeah, no, that I think is huge for Radford. I think Radford's going to be very, very good again. They will be one of the favorites in the Big South. And then at number 5, this was tough. We were between this team and Liberty, by the way, is going to be very good. But at number 5, I've got Old Dominion. They played in the CUSA, which is a very tough conference. They were competitive all year long, won 20-plus games. They returned some players, too. I think we're going to see ODU be very competitive again next year.
Yeah, they only lost 2 games of conference last year.
Yeah.
And this is no joke of a conference. You have teams like Marshall, Eastern Kentucky,
Western Kentucky.
I'm sorry, Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee State, I believe.
Yeah.
That are all very competitive and hard to beat. So ODU did very good this year, and I just think they're going to roll into next year. Could make a deep run in the tournament next year.
Completely agree with that. Okay, we're going to take a break. We're going to bring on the head coach of Longwood University, Griff Aldrich. So bear with us. We'll be right back in just a minute. This is Virginia Sports Report.
There's nothing left to say. I know where I'm going. We're starting here today, and you know that right. You know that's right. You know.
I spend a lot of time in the backyard, and I'm the center of attention at summer barbecues. In '96, I made some of the tastiest s'mores you've ever had. In '01, we stayed up all night telling ghost stories with the neighbors. Yeah, I know I've got a bit of wear and tear. And sadly, in '09, it was me, your backyard fire pit, that accidentally started a wildfire. When a summer breeze carried one of my embers into some dry brush.
Sparks from an improperly extinguished fire pit can start a wildfire. Spark a change, not a wildfire. Visit SmokeyBear.com, brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Well, we are, and I know some of you guys on Facebook can sometimes hear the phone on the other end. We're trying to get Griff on. We're going to take a quick break again. Just got him to text back. Should be able to get him on, so give me just a minute here.
When I was little, I didn't talk for a long time. I liked things to always be the same. Anything new or different would scare and upset me. I was very sensitive to lights and sounds. It was almost like I had bigger eyes and ears than everyone else. So I built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. I didn't like looking people in the eye. It made me feel uncomfortable. I'd throw big tantrums over little things like when my socks didn't match. Sometimes I'd do the same things over and over. Until one day, I found out I had autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I learned how to live with it better.
You can see signs of autism in children as young as 18 months. Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
All right, back here on Virginia Sports Report. Again, thank you guys for making us a part of your Wednesday evening. And for those of you tuning into the recorded podcast, always love to hear your thoughts. You can reach us on Twitter. Go to twitter.com/VA Sports Report. Joining us now is the newly named head coach of Longwood University, Griff Aldrich. Griff, thank you for joining the program. How are you this evening?
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So listen, let's get right to it. You were the assistant coach at UMBC during their amazing tournament run, and had that big win against UVA. When you guys made the tournament, what was the prep like as you're preparing for UVA?
Well, frankly, not too different than any other game that we would prepare for. You know, you're obviously looking at a lot of tape. We followed UVA not only because there were several friends among the staffs, but Coach Odom knows Coach Bennett well, and then Orlando Vandross, who's I think the director of player development and recruiting, used to be on staff with several of my former colleagues. So we had followed Virginia's progress throughout the season rather closely, and just knew what an outstanding team they were, both offensively and defensively, at least from an efficiency perspective. And then we watched their just out of pure interest their journey through the ACC tournament. So we knew quite a bit about them prior to the pairing in the NCAA. But our game preparation was as it would typically be.
We're speaking with a new Longwood head basketball coach who was a former assistant at UMBC and also was captain at Hampton Sydney, which is, by the way, over near Longwood's campus as well. Coach, how do you take that game planning for UVA and use that at Longwood, where you're going to be playing, by the way, a similar defense? Liberty will use that pack line defense to their advantage. You're going to see great players like Ed Polite at Radford. How do you take your experience with UMBC, and how does that translate to Longwood and being the head coach there?
Well, that's a great question. I think each team is different, and each team obviously has different personnel. And what might work for one group of players may or may not work for another group of players. Obviously, it's still early for me. I'm getting to know the outstanding group of young men here at Longwood, understanding how they tick, what drives them, what their interests are, and have been encouraged by what I've seen. But I think one of the great characteristics of Ryan Odom is just his loose way that he really provides his players with freedom. And my personality is not quite like Ryan's, but I really did enjoy his way on the offensive end. So we'll take a lot of the same characteristics and attributes that we tried to employ at UMBC and apply those to what we're doing at Longwood. Again, some of that will always be personnel dependent. And so as we kind of continue to formulate the roster for next season, we'll continue to sharpen our style of play and our focus.
Hey, Griff, it's Chris Mason. How's it going tonight?
Hey, Chris, how are you?
Doing well. Being in business now, and I always like to draw parallels between sports and competitiveness of that and business. So tell us, I know you have some extensive background in business, being the CEO, I think, of a company and working for a law firm for a few years. Tell us how that is parallel to and translates to the hardwood.
Yeah, I think, organizationally speaking, you're always about building the right culture. And I have had the privilege and benefit of having been involved with several outstanding organizations and seeing what works. Some of our competitors who, frankly, we were trying to emulate and trying to understand what their culture and core values, what made them different, what set them apart as an outstanding organization, what they strive to become. And I think there are a lot of parallels. I think there are a lot of similarities when you're trying to, build a team on the hardwood versus also in the corporate environment. There are similarities. Is there teamwork? Is there sacrificial living for the betterment of the organization, or are folks more out for themselves? I think a culture of excellence, really striving to perform at the best of your ability day in and day out, How do you handle adversity in the corporate world? Just like on the basketball court, you're hit with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unanticipated consequences of decisions, and how do you respond to it? And usually the outstanding organizations and outstanding teams are really, really excellent at responding to adversity and choosing to do the next right thing. And so that's a lot of the characteristics and some of the attributes that I think are transferable, and we'll certainly try to instill in our players and in our program.
One of the most important things in business, Griff, as you know, is branding and how you establish a brand. And, when we look at Longwood and we compare it to even some of the other schools in the state, let's just be real here. Longwood's still very new to the Division I scene, really just came on nearly 10 years ago. It's a small school. The gym is small. Farmville's a small town as well. Now, none of that necessarily has to be a bad thing, but with such a small school, it looks pretty challenging even in the Big South. How do you position Longwood's brand to make it to where you're going to start competing with the Liberties and the Radfords of the conference, and actually not just, win some games and be competitive, but maybe be a player in the Big South? How do you position your brand to where you can start bringing in these recruits and really make a name for yourself and your program?
Yeah, it's a great question, because we are blessed with some great competition. Liberty and Radford, Mike Jones, and they've done just a great job in building their programs. Not to mention, some of the other power teams in Winthrop and UNC Asheville, and Tubby Smith's joined from down at High Point. So they're great coaches with Richie McKay up at Liberty and Mike Jones and Pat Kelsey. So, the competition is fierce. However, I will say I'm excited for what Longwood does offer. It may not be the largest school, but to be honest, we've got an incredible fan base. The community I found is really supportive. I think you look at the attendance numbers and the fan numbers from a percentage of capacity of Willett Hall. It's really strong, and so I'm excited about that. I think when you can get an organization and a community behind a program, I think that instills a lot of enthusiasm. People like to play in front of a great crowd. And I've said this, elsewhere. I think Longwood is on the rise. It's a university that's growing. It's President Reevely has his sights on doing great things here with the university and throughout the community and really partnering. And so that really has me excited that the university is moving forward. I think the basketball program, specifically, to your question, I think from a branding perspective, I think it's, the style of play. How are you going to play? I think we're going to play an up-tempo, exciting style of play.
Cool.
Very similar in many respects to how we played at UMBC, I think. And I think that's a great way to do it. I think you couple that with an outstanding fan base. And I think also recruiting the right kid. I think, at UMBC we were able to inherit some outstanding student athletes and also bring in some great student athletes. And, you saw at UMBC you're able to capture, the hearts of the nation. In that upset victory. And, are we going to be able to capture the hearts of the nation? That I don't know, but, certainly hope to capture the hearts of the community. And I think that starts with recruiting the right players. I think it starts with playing the right style that's exciting for fans, it's fun for players. And then just coupling that with the efforts of President Reevely, his administration, and what Troy Austin is hoping to do. And you see other sports at Longwood that are doing it. I specifically think of the softball program that Kathy Riley has built, and it's a juggernaut. So we're excited about the prospects of Longwood. basketball. Obviously, a good bit of work to do, but it's great work, and we're ready to get after it.
What do you see, with your current team? I'm sure, by now you've been employed at Longwood for a little over a week. So I'm sure, you've had time to sit down, look at the roster, kind of figure out,
we've got it all figured out. We're headed to the beach.
I'm sure you've probably started putting together a plan. So, when you look at your current team, give me a little bit of a SWOT analysis here. What are some of the strengths? What are some of the weaknesses you see with your team, and how do you improve?
Well, the first thing I'd say, today we had a workout, and I think the guys are hungry. So I would really start with that, which is, I think at the core, any great organization and great team, the players have to be hungry. They have to have a growth mindset and a desire to get better every day. And I've been encouraged by what I've seen thus far. I think Coach G did a great job of bringing in a great group of guys. They really are wonderful kids, and so I think we're starting with a good nucleus of folks who are already here. From the standpoint of what we have, obviously Isaiah Walton is coming back in kind of the guard wing position. An experienced player who can really shoot the ball well. Camille Chapman is a freshman about to be a sophomore who also is a really nice shooter. And then, in the post, we also have, a handful of other guys who've got great experience. So we've got some great experience, but also have some young players as well in the form of, Jay Sean Smith and then Jordan Cintron. So we've got a nice collection of experience, but also youth that I think can blend together to hopefully provide a very competitive team for next year.
Well, Griff, listen, we're very excited for you. I look forward to watching you guys next year. All I ask is that, I'm a Liberty grad. I was the mascot at Liberty, so I am very passionate about them. I do ask that you take it easy on Richie McKay and the Flames.
Yeah, well, I'll say the same thing to him. So I will say when I saw Tubby Smith at the Final Four and introduced myself, and we connected on Longwood and High Point, and as we kind of parted ways, he did mention that I needed to take it easy on him. So.
What is he like, by the way? Because he's like one of
guy.
these. He's one of these coaches. Was at Kentucky. He's been at big programs before. Now he goes to his alma mater, High Point.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool to go back to your alma mater like that.
Absolutely. I've know of him by reputation, like we all do, and then also through some close friends who know him well. And I just think he's an outstanding ambassador for the game. Tries to do things the right way from what I know, and so I'm excited to be in the conference with him, and excited to compete against him, and I think it'll be great for Big South basketball.
Yeah, I tell you, Big South next year is going to be great. You got Liberty and Radford returning a lot of their guys. UNC Asheville is going to be good again, like they always are. High Point's got Tubby Smith. I think, honestly, Griff, and I say this, I wrote an article about it. I think you're a home run hire for Longwood. I think what you bring to the program, it is just, I've never seen a more appropriate fit for program to bring in somebody from UMBC with business background, knows the area. You played at Hampton, Sydney. I think it's a great hire, and best of luck to you throughout the next several years of your career as you look to take the Lancers into competitive territory. We're excited to watch it.
Well, I appreciate it, and send me your number. I need you as my marketing agent.
Hey, I'll do that. I'm always looking for some side work. Thanks for joining, Griff.
Okay, y'all take care.
Thanks, Griff. Have a good day.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
That was Griff Aldrich, Longwood head coach. That was another, just like Mike Jones from Radford, great interview. Chris, I think you can tell from that, he's a smart guy. I came away from that thinking, okay, he's got a plan. He knows what he's doing. And, I know he joked around about, knowing everything after only being there a week and a half. I know it doesn't know everything, but I think this is a team on the right path. You can see clearly what he's trying to do from a branding perspective, from a roster perspective, and how he's going to build that team. I said it when I wrote the article when he was first hired. I'm going to say it again. I think it's a fantastic hire for Longwood.
Yeah, I think what I took away from it is he's kind of a no-nonsense kind of guy.
Yeah.
So when you have a small group of relatively young men, one not necessarily a bad apple, but somebody with the wrong attitude or just coming in the day, I think he's going to be able to turn that kid around and say, look, we've got a job to do. We've got to get from here to there today, and you need to shape up. And that's where I think he's going to really benefit this program.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to watch it grow. I mean, it is so tough. You look around some of the Big South, and I know there are schools that, like Presbyterian, that are fairly small, but, Liberty is a big program that's looking to get bigger. Radford is a growing program. High Point, I've been to that campus before. I can tell you High Point's got tons of money, and them hiring Tubby Smith is not a sweetheart moment. They are hiring Tubby Smith because they're trying to make a name for themselves. So, the Big South is tough. And to beat Longwood, that small school in Farmville, is going to make it difficult. And I said those things about Longwood not to poke fun at the school, really, but really just to point out that this is a total and complete rebuild he's going to have to do with this team. They were awful this year. They've been awful since they've been a Division I team. So he's going to have to take this team from one of the worst teams in the country and turn it around. And I think of all the candidates they had to hire, he's the perfect fit to do it. I'm very excited for him, and I was very happy that he joined our podcast tonight. He's going to be great at Longwood, and we're excited to watch it happen. All right, we're running a little over. I want to thank all of you guys for joining us. Again, download us on iTunes. Go to the iTunes podcast app. Search for Virginia Sports Report and hit subscribe. Go to virginiasportsreport.com and read our articles on there. We will be getting some more published this week. I'm always looking for articles written by you. I'm looking for people to come on the website right full time. So please let me know if that's you. We will communicate back and forth, and I will get you all set up to do that. I want to thank you guys for joining us. This is Virginia Sports Report. Have a good night.
Gray button.